right before our eyes once again.
Oh, I think so. I think you're absolutely right on that. You know, the other thing too, Brian, it's not just the gusts that are now 60 or more. It's sustained winds. You know, we're well into the 40s and 50s here. I think even with a sustained wind. So it's not just an occasional gust here. I mean, I can hear trees constantly and the wind whistling through the pines here, much more than I could earlier on. And we had, some decent pines where I were earlier. So yeah, definitely, it's a whole different wind than what we dealt with on the east side. A whole different wind.
And Jim, you were talking to the police chief or whoever that was at Fayetteville up there, the incredible problems around Fayetteville, North Carolina. Winds gusting to 58 last hour, within 30 minutes ago at Fayetteville, that far north. So imagine with all the flooding and the winds coming in at 58 miles an hour in gusts.
That's awful.
It's a very, very bad combination. Like we were talking about earlier, I really think that we're just going to hear about so much after the fact here that people are dealing with very difficult situations across North Carolina, not to mention to what's already happened back in South Carolina and Georgia that we haven't even heard about yet.
Yeah, I think in a situation like this, there's like a day to day and a half lag because of just the scope of it. So many large trees. I saw pictures on Twitter of probably, I'm going to say 3 to 4 foot, big trees that have come down. That's not an hour job, all right? I spent a little bit of time with a chainsaw, and to get rid of something like that and move it out of the way so potentially you get to even another one that size, it takes a long time. So I really think some of these areas, Georgia and South Carolina, have not even been gotten to yet in terms of what we are going to see. North Carolina, like you mentioned, Brian, the flood, and now we're even putting stronger winds up in there and stressing tree root balls that are literally sitting in water now. So, man, this is just relentless.
Yeah, Jim, I remember
it's at every single facet except for snow.
Jim, I remember back to Hurricane Irene in 1999 in Broward County around Fort Lauderdale was a big flood. And the winds never got much above 50 miles an hour. They were mostly in the 40s, maybe the low 50s in some spots. And there were a tremendous number of trees down and power lines down. And 6 people died, a combination of driving their car into flooded canals and walking outside on live power lines. But it was all related to the steady winds in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range and the saturated ground. And so it can be a deadly combination if the wrong things come together. And the rainfall amount that we've been talking about here exceeded what we saw in Irene in South Florida. And you are in hilly country here where the rain gets magnified because it runs to the low levels. Wow, I see the wind picking up. It's picking up.
Yeah, I mean, it slaps you in the face, too, because we get these droplets of rain with it.
And I imagine, Jim,
I'm just trying to think about the area that we're talking about here in terms of the rainfall, how large it is, and how we still have large sections of Interstate 95 that are closed tonight, Brian. People are driving down under the sunshine and the beautiful fall weather and potentially coming into North Carolina. And now all of a sudden backed up traffic, Interstate 40 also closed in a couple of spots. We're still very much into this. This is the effect of Matthew right now and what it's becoming on North Carolina. And the calling card here, unfortunately, certainly looks like an inland flooding situation and a storm surge one that we had earlier on. So multiple threats, as we typically see from a landfalling hurricane, and Matthew was certainly living up to it.
Jim,
wow. Brian, at some point I'm going to have to take a break and turn up my IFB because when I was down on the beach, I didn't have to have it up that loud so I could hear you perfectly. But now, because of the whistling wind and the strength of it, and also the rain hitting my jacket, my face, I can't hardly hear you on IFB. So take it for a second. I'm going to move to an area where I can actually turn up the IFB. I'll be back in a second.
Okay. All right, Jim Cantore. All right, find a good spot there to get dried out. So this is a very unusual situation. I've been doing hurricanes a long time, and not that they never transition. Obviously, all the time they transition into more coastal storms, but to have it be so near the coast where you get this extraordinarily strong back end, where the back end of it has stronger winds than the front end of it, none of them come to mind, I must say. All right, Mark Elliott is out there. And Mark, are you still in Savannah? Where are you?
I am still in Savannah, Brian, and all the risks that you're talking about from North Carolina into Virginia, Savannah went through last night. So I totally understand what Jim is going through right now. Plus the tree damage impact here in Savannah is huge. There are trees down all over the city. But let me start off with some good news here. Behind me is River Street, and for the first time in about 36 hours, all the lights are on down River Street. That is a huge change. Power has returned, and that brings such a sigh of relief to the people here that were planning on having an Oktoberfest weekend and reveling down this street. It's been basically abandoned until now. Now that the power's back on, people are really starting to come out in droves once again. But today, we had a real amazing opportunity with the Coast Guard in the Air Station Savannah. They were able to take us on a private tour of some of the areas from Savannah and off towards those barrier islands that just honestly we haven't been able to tell everybody how they're doing yet because there isn't any access to them yet. It's starting off here in the eastern side of Savannah where there's still some tree damage. There's trees on homes. These are large trees. Big root balls just pulled out of the ground because of just too much water. Totally waterlogged. Couldn't handle the winds that we got across the Savannah area. From there we go up towards the Whitmarsh area. This is one of the islands on your way to Jekyll. Both of these islands had some water inundation, but to be quite honest, even the airmen from the Coast Guard saying, hey, it actually looks better than we thought it would across this area just outside of Savannah. Some people that are returning there eventually are going to have better news to come back to than they may even have been anticipating. That's the good news. The bad news is once you cross the border into Hilton Head. Hilton Head is a totally different story. Right now, across Hilton Head, something that we really could only see from being in the air is that Hilton Head's almost shaped like a bowl. And where the wave inundation and the surge came through, and through that first round of houses along the beaches, the water is now stuck. It is street after street, house after house, absolutely surrounded by water. Hilton Head has a long cleanup to go. We circled the island a couple of times, honestly looking for any access points, if any of the roads were cleared out, to be able to bring coverage to you from there. There is no way to get to Hilton Head right now. They are still working on clearing the bridges. They are still working on clearing the fallen trees, and then you have all that water. It is an island inside Hilton Head right now. And then there was also wind damage that we saw. We were flying right past some of these bigger resorts. Looked like a hotel or maybe a condo community where the roof had a hole ripped right through it. So that entire building was basically exposed to the storm. The bottom line is that the effects from Savannah to the coast are extremely localized. While River Street had some water problems and certainly some power problems, that is now easing up. Further up the hill, and I say that because Savannah itself actually has an elevation just steps away here of 30 to 40 feet. And the water and surge wasn't the issue, but the rainfall, flooding, and the tree damage certainly was. We had lots of houses with trees down on top of them, and certainly lots of roads blocked, and that brought all the power issues. And then as you head towards the coast, there was, of course, that surge, and reports of that surge anywhere from 7 to 12 feet of water basically going through the streets, and that water is still stuck in Hilton Head. So from what we could see, Hilton Head really took the brunt of this storm, Brian. We've been continuing to follow this for you. Again, the good news is that Savannah itself is coming alive tonight. Power's back on and a sigh of relief, but a little consolation when there's some of those 3 to 4 foot tree trunks in your lawn. Little consolation if you didn't have power all day, and certainly little consolation if you're on Hilton Head and surrounded by water right now. Jim, I was in the water that you were getting hit by with the IFB crank full force yesterday. You could feel those raindrops hitting you even on the backside of the storm. So I know exactly how it feels right there for you right now.
Yeah, and what a great brief. Not necessarily a happy one that you just gave us to be allowed to go up to the Coast Guard. Mark, that's incredible. Did you again? And maybe I just missed this, so maybe you could just recap it for me because I was just fiddling with my earpiece here. But what did you see in terms of size of trees, numbers of trees, structural damage? Give me the scope, because I heard the same thing about Hilton Head. They really, really took it. And if I'm remembering correctly, because I've absorbed so much data, I think they had winds over 90 miles per hour on a couple of occasions in gusts last night. So some big wind for Hilton Head.
As well.
Not surprising to hear the kind of damage. Yeah. So what?
Yeah,
so again,
Jekyll had those kinds
what
of
kind
winds
of
as well,
structural
and
damage
so-
are we talking about?
Sure, sorry, stomping on you a little bit there, Jim. But yeah, we definitely had those winds, and that brought some really big-time tree damage across the area. The trees right along the Savannah River, or the trees close to the surge, they just got inundated. The high tide happened at the same time as the worst of the surge, and so they were just sitting in water.